Hi, I'm Bob Tabor with www.learnvisualstudio.net, where I teach beginners the skills they need to get their first software development job, building Windows and web apps at the world's best companies as quickly as possible. So in this lesson, we're going to talk about the map control and talk about the GPS sensor inside of our device. And what we're going to talk about specifically can be applied in a more general context as well with regards to any of the sensors, whether it be the accelerometer, the GPS, and so on, NFC, available in our phones, and how to enable those capabilities and work with them. So while we are talking about a specific capability, you can apply the general knowledge to all the capabilities and how to work with them. There's always like an object that you can work with that represents that particular sensor, and you'll see that in play here. So we'll be able to get the latitude and the longitude in a GeoPosition object that we can then work with. We can set that for the map and point the map to a specific location, or retrieve that from the map and say, hey, where are you currently pointed to? We can zoom into the map, zoom out of the map, things of that nature. So the easiest way to get started with this is to go ahead and create a new project, and we'll call this just location and maps. And we're going to start off, I think the easiest way to get started with working with a map is to actually drag and drop a map control from the toolbox. And you'll have to go down to all XAML controls and drag and drop, where are you, map control onto the design surface. And you can see that this is only enabled when the application is running. What we're going to do here is actually set up our grid. Let me set a margin first of like 20 on the side, 50 on the top, 20 and 20. And I'm going to set up some of the grid.row definitions, and we'll start off with just a row definition with a height of star, and then below that a row definition with the height of like 50, and I think we'll add a couple more before the end of this, but this will help us get started. I'm going to now remove all the specifics, specific heights and widths and alignments and so forth from the map control. The only thing I really am going to set on it though is a name, and we'll call this my map. All right, in fact I'm going to do like that. All right, you can see it's taking up the entire area except, you know, around the borders and this little area in the bottom. So now let's just run the app and see what happens whenever we first, what we get out of the box. Let's just say it that way. All right, so we're zoomed in over North and South America, and that's it. Well, wait a second. I thought we'd be able to like set the location here on the additional tools on the location tab to like a specific place. Like I search for Redmond, Washington here, and if I zoom in, here's the Microsoft campus, and maybe I want to zoom in specifically on this Redmond Town Center, the secret corporate offices of Microsoft Virtual Academy, or somewhere around here. All right, don't tell them I told you that. So how can I get this map to reflect what's currently on screen? Well, I'm going to need to find out from the phone, from the emulator, but if this was a physical phone, it would be here, where it's positioned in the world. Grab that location and set my map to that location. So that's our first order of business. Let's see if we can make that work. So let us go into the main page.xaml.cs, and let's on-navigate it to, I'll paste in a little code. It's always good. All right, and so here we go. I'm going to need to add some using statements. Notice that this using statement is windows.devices.geolocation, and so any of the device-specific sensors, like on a phone, you're going to have GPS and a few others, right, that you might not have on a Microsoft Surface or a desktop. So here's where I think where the universal projects will kind of part ways in terms of the overlap in their APIs. I don't believe that that's going to be available to you if you're working, if you're trying to build WinRT apps. I could be wrong. It just depends on the device, probably. Okay, so the next thing we're going to need to do, since we have an await keyword, we're going to need to add async to our onNavigated to. And notice that we're going to work with the geolocator, and this is going, it says it's associated capabilities at the bottom of the little pop-up shows that we need to allow the location capability. So we'll go to our package.apex manifest, and you'll recall we talked about this very early on, where we can enable the location capability by just adding a little check next to it. And if you see here, now we're going to say go out and determine the current geoposition for our device. We'd like it to be accurate to within 50 meters. We could change that if we want to, but that should be accurate enough for our purposes. And there's an article out on MSDN that talks about how the position is located, and you get some idea of it here, that there's not just one way that a position is determined by the device. It'll not only use, in some cases, the GPS, which is satellite, but then also any Wi-Fi sometimes has some positioning information. Cell tower triangulation is another method. And so depending on how accurate you need this to be and what the resources are near the device at the given time that you're attempting to retrieve the position, it could take longer because it has to account for all of these possibilities, Wi-Fi signals that are nearby, cell towers, GPS, in order to find the location. All right, and I don't understand how all that works, I'll be perfectly honest with you, but it does impact the speed and the accuracy as to how much information can be collected by the device. All right, so at some point we're going to get a geoposition, and the geoposition, if we were to like take a look at position, it gives us a coordinate, and a coordinate is made up of a latitude and a longitude and some other information that we really won't need for our purposes, like the altitude and things of that nature. But we'll use that position then to grab a point, and a point is simply just a combination of the latitude and longitude, and we'll use that to try and set the view for the map. So we're going to try, whenever you see that keyword try in a method name, that means it's going to return back to you a true or false. True if it was successful, false if it wasn't. We're going to ignore that Boolean that's returned back by the try set view async. If it can't do it, then it just won't. It'll be quiet about it. We pass in a point, which is a geocoordinate position, and then which is basically what we get from position.coordinate. And then we also get to send in how the zoom level. So like 0 would be that we can see all of North and South America, and 20 would be where we can see in our own backyards. All right, and the D next to it just is a way of making a double literal. So I would give it the number 18, but I want to be specific that I want this to be a double. So I just put a capital D next to it. And that's all I need to do there. So now we should be able to run the application and then see our map control somewhere near this Redmond Town Center in Redmond, Washington. It takes a little bit of time to determine the location, and we get this zooming effect. And we're not, we're looking here at 73rd way, and this is 85th, and I'm not sure how much further away this is, but it's close enough, close enough for our purposes, at least for this first pass, that I'm pretty happy with that. So let's go ahead and shut down our app. The next thing I want to do is implement 2 button controls. So I want to be able to set and retrieve the current position of the map. And actually, let me add one more row definition, another row with the height of 50, and we'll create a we'll write out in a text block what the position currently is. All right, so we have a get position and a set position button. I'm going to hit F12 on my keyboard to create the method stubs for both of those. In the get position, I'm just going to retrieve the current latitude and longitude from the map control's center point. So my map.center.position latitude, my map center latitude, longitude. And then in set position, what I'm going to do is kind of the opposite. I'm going to give it a specific latitude and longitude, and then I'm going to attempt to add the async keyword there. Set it to a position that I happen to know, which is a park near the house where I grew up in Chicago, in a little town called Burbank. All right. So let's see how this works. Let's run it. Let it find its current position, which should be back in near Seattle. Great. And we'll get the position and print it out to screen. Awesome. So this is this latitude and longitude. And then I'm going to use two hard-coded values for latitude and longitude when I click set position. And now we're going to zoom all the way across the country, and we'll be here somewhere in Chicago on the south side. All right, very cool. But I think we can do a little bit better than that. So what I'm going to do next is go here to main page.xaml, and I think I'm going to add one more row definition. And here what I want to do is add a slider control, which will allow me to affect the zoom level. And so you can see that I'll make it a maximum of 20 and a minimum of 10. And what we'll do is whenever somebody changes the position of the slider, we'll zoom in or zoom out on the map. And it's really easy to do. First thing I'm going to do is just make sure that my map has been initialized and it's available on the page, because the slider might, while the page is being loaded up or initialized, it might set a value, and we don't want to mess with that. So just make sure map is ready and available and ready to go. And then we'll set the zoom level equal to whatever was passed in. So this range-based value changed event args of E, named E, you can see that we can get to the old value and the new value. And so we'll just take the new value and set it. It happens to be double, and set the zoom level to that, and that happens to be double as well. Furthermore, what I'm going to do is whenever we first on navigated to, whenever we first come in, I want to set the zoom level of the map to 18. I'm sorry, we've set the zoom level of the map to 18. We want to set the slider's current value to that as well. So let's run the app. And the first thing we'll do is zoom into Redmond. And now you can see our slider control is set to about 18. I'm just going to pull it back here. And as I do, notice we're zooming out. Very cool. Very cool. And we can, you know, pan around this and look at what's here. Very nice. I can even pan it back further, like so. And still grab the position. And now let's set the position again to Chicago, but I know I set the center position to Burbank, and specifically Newcastle Park, where I used to hang out when I was a kid and play. All right. And the last thing that I really want to talk about here is this little warning at the very bottom. It says, warning, map service token is not specified. And so before you can use the map in a real app that you're going to distribute to other people, you're going to need to get a token, and you get that from the Dev Center. And I'm not going to demonstrate that, but you would set, at some point, you would set the map service token to whatever is provided to you by the Dev Center. When you go in and say, I want a token for using the map services, okay? And you would just set it like so. And I think that's all I really want to talk about. At a high level, that's how you work with the various sensors on the phone. In this case, working with GPS, we get a location object that tells us where we're positioned, and we're able to use that with the map control in this case in order to position the map where the phone currently is, or we can position the map anywhere in the world as long as we have the latitude and the longitude, and then we can zoom in and zoom out, and we can make it as easy as, you know, working with the slider control like we did here. All right, so hopefully that was helpful. I think we have one last lesson before we build our last exercise. So we're quickly coming to a close on this series. We'll see you in the next lesson. Thank you. Hi, I'm Bob Tabor with www.learnvisualstudio.net, where I teach beginners the skills they need to get their first software development job building Windows and web apps at the world's best companies as quickly as possible. So in this app, we're going to talk about animation, animating the various properties of the controls on our pages. And we're going to keep it very simple. Originally, this idea was going to translate into the project we're going to begin building in the next lesson. However, it didn't make the cut. I didn't really need animation, as it turned out. But I wanted to cover this topic, at least at the very basics of it. You'll probably need to go on after this lesson to learn more on MSDN or on Channel 9 about animation inside of your phone or Windows apps. However, this should get you started. We're going to learn about animation using Declarative XAML and animation using C#. And if you take a look at the Windows Phone 8 for Absolute Beginner Series, what I did about a year ago with Clint Rutkiss, we used animation to animate the images as we were pulling them down from Flickr. And so that we discussed there the reasons why in some cases you might need to take a pure C# approach versus a pure XAML approach. But I'm going to show both of them in this video and then let you choose which one you want to use for your specific purpose. But let's go ahead and get started by creating a new project called Working with Animation. And on our main page, I'm going to create a stack panel. And one of the things we're going to need to work with, we're going to begin by fading in and fading out a image. And so we're going to need to pull the familiar snowy.png image. You should be able to retrieve this from the assets folder of the lesson number 28, I think we're on. Whatever this lesson is, in that folder, there should be a snowy PNG, and I'll go ahead and bring in the sunny PNG as well. We'll use both of these, and we'll simply start by adding that image to our stack panel here. All right, you can see that I've set the opacity of that image to 0 to begin with. So we'll start at 0 and we'll move to 1 over the course of 2 seconds using an animation. We'll get to that in just a moment. To kick off that animation, we're going to click a button. So let's add a button to our stack panel. And so when somebody clicks the button, we want to kick off the animation. Now, animations are created inside of Storyboards. And a storyboard is actually a collection of animations that all happen at the same time. And so the idea is that some event happens in your app, user clicks something, drags something, hovers over something, and then you fire off a storyboard in response to that in the event handler for that given element. A storyboard can contain multiple animations, so you can change, for example, the size, the opacity, the color, just pretty much any of the attributes of other given elements on the page based on, firing off a storyboard. So let's go ahead and create a storyboard. We're actually going to create it as a resource, so stackpanel.resources. So here are the resources that will be available to all the children of the stack panel. We'll create inside of there a storyboard. And we'll give it a name. And we'll create a show storyboard. And then, tell you what, while I'm here, I'll just copy this. And I'll create a hide storyboard as well. So inside of the show storyboard, we want to take this opacity property and turn it from 0 to 1. And we want it to make that transition from 0.0 0, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, all the way to 1.0 over the course of 2 seconds. All right, so 0 will make it completely hidden, 1 will make it completely visible. And so to do that, we're going to need a special type of animation called a double animation. So let me just paste in the double animation that I've already created here, just to kind of show you the parts of an animation. Let me move this out of the way. All right, so there's, as you can see, several different parts to this. There is the target name. So what are we targeting? We're targeting another control inside of our storyboard called animated image. So it's this image control right here. You can see that not only are we targeting this element, but also this property of the element, the opacity property, which is currently set to 0. So we want to go from 0 to 1 over the course of 0 hours, 0 minutes, and 2 seconds. Okay? Now, to get this to work, I want it to kick off this storyboard whenever the user clicks the animate button. So I'm going to go to the click event handler, and we will do show storyboard dot begin, like so. All right, so let's go ahead and run the app. And I'll click the animate button, and slowly our snowy.png appears. All right, let's improve this example to create the opposite storyboard. So in this case, we're going to hide. So we're going to affect the same element and the same properties. This time we're going to go from 1 to 0 over the course of 2 seconds. All right, we're still going to work with the animated image. We're still going to work with the opacity property of that animated image control, but we're going to change from 1 to 0 over the course of 2 seconds. All right. Furthermore, whenever we work inside of our main page .xaml, in this case, we're going to need to use the same button. I'm going to just do this animated image .opacity. So if it's 0, then show the storyboard, otherwise begin the hide storyboard, like so. And so when we call this, obviously everything inside of here, all the animations that have been set, will be executed then. Let's go ahead and run it. All right, now that it's the opacity is 1, we should be able to click it a second time and it disappears. Great. All right, so the moral of the story is that storyboards can contain one or more animations. There are different types of animations for things like changing the background colors, or just the brushes, animating brushes. The word double in this case indicates the values that we're animating. So from 1.0 to 0.0 would be more appropriate. Okay. And we just have to say what elements are we targeting and the property of those elements, and then how long we want, in this case for double animation, how long we want it to run. In the case of other types of animations, we would have to give it positions, colors, things of that nature, depending on the type of animation. All right, so now let's go to a C# example of this idea. And what I want to do this time, and let me just comment out all of this, comment that out as well. And in this case, what I want to do is, whenever the image is opened, I want to fire off this event. All right, so let's go here. And what I'll do then is programmatically set in my button click event, I'm going to set the source for my animated image control. All right, so let me add in the windows.ui.xaml.media.imaging namespace for the bitmap image. So whenever we load up a new image into our animated image control, this image opened event will fire. And when that fires, at that point, what we'll do is create a new storyboard programmatically. I'm going to add the using windows.ui.xaml.media.animation. All right, so we'll create a new storyboard. We'll create a double animation, and then we'll call storyboard.setTarget, passing in the animation type and the control that we want to target, as well as the double animation and the property that we want to target. We'll add the double animation to the children of the storyboard and then tell the storyboard to begin. All right. So let's see. So in other words, button click will load up a new image into our image control, and when that happens, this image opened event will fire, and it'll say, before you actually open it, let's create a storyboard with a single double animation to set the opacity to 1, all right, and then kick off that storyboard. Oh, and one last modification here. I'm going to remove the source from the image this time. Otherwise, it'll just animate whenever it starts. All right, so now I'm going to click the animate button, and our sunny.png appears. All right, and so you can see that we're creating the storyboard on an ad hoc basis whenever a new image has been loaded into our image control. All right, and like I said, these are two very simple examples of animation. However, that should get you at least some basis and understanding of what animations are, how they're associated with storyboards, how to kick off a storyboard with the begin. There's also an end where you can stop it prematurely, and so on. All right, so that's all I wanted to say about animations. There's a lot more to learn there, very deep topic, but we're going to move on now to our final lesson, which is creating our map notes exercise. So we'll see you there. Thank you. Hi, I'm Bob Tabor with www.learnvisualstudio.net, where I teach beginners the skills they need to get their first software development job, building Windows and web apps at the world's best companies as quickly as possible. So in this lesson, the final lesson, we are going to build map notes. It's a combination of a note app, and whenever you take a note, it will record the geoposition based on the phone's location of where you made that note. Then you'll be able to reference that note, see it, see where you took the note, and either delete the note or continue on, from there. So let me show you how this works. I don't have any data loaded in just yet. You can see that I've got my location, my map positioned here somewhere in Redmond. Let's see if it finds it correctly. Yeah, it sure does. All right, so we're in good shape there. I'm going to create a new note. This is my first note. My diary when I visited Redmond in October. I visited the old Channel 9 studios and had a great seafood dinner. I don't know. All right, and I'll click add, and then you can see it shows up. This is my first note. Let me add one more note. This is a very long title, and I want to show you what happens. And then I'm going to just put, now is the time for all good men to come to the aid of their country. The aid, not the AI. And I guess that's probably enough there, and I'll click add again. All right, so you have two. Notice that, first of all, I'm able to make sure that the title doesn't run off the edge of the viewable area, but it just adds 3 ellipses after that. So we'll talk about that technique. It's just simple setting on the text block. Also, now that you've seen this add screen, I'm going to click one of my notes again, the first note, and you can see the map goes to that page. I can say delete the note. It shows a little message box at the very top, so we'll demonstrate how to use that. I'll click yes, I'm sure, and it removes it from the collection. And of course, we'll want to make sure that it actually did remove the note. And let's change this to Rowlett, Texas, near where I live, and we'll just pick there we go, Miller Road and 190. All right, and I'll set a point there, like it's there. All right, and I'll add a new note. This note I wrote when I visited Texas. And here is some note text. All right. And so you can see I am at Miller and 190, President George Bush Tollway. Click add. And now you can see when I go there, I can get back to the Texas one. I'm going to click cancel, or I can see the one that I created in Redmond. All right, there we go. Great. All right, so that's how Map Notes works. You're going to be surprised to see at first how much it resembles what we did with the Daily Rituals app. In fact, you can kind of use this little template for saving data, retrieving data. A lot of the things are the same. The only thing that really changes is the kind of data that we're saving and redisplaying on screen, and then obviously how we bind to the data on our main page.xaml. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to open up a new copy of Visual Studio, drag it over here into place. Great, and we'll create a new project called Map Notes. This will be a blank app template. And so the very first thing that I want to do is I'm going to add a data model folder, and in here I'm going to add a new class. I'll call this my data source. This is exactly what we did last time when we built an app together. All right, and I'll start off by making a public class map note. So this will be, every note that we create will be an instance of map note. And so give it a title, the note itself, the date and time it was created, which I don't really display, but we'll still capture it for now. That's good. And then we'll capture the latitude as a double and the longitude as well. And I think that's all I'm going to need for map note. So we'll come down here to our public class data source, and we'll start by creating a private field that will allow us to keep a collection of map notes, an observable collection of map notes. We'll add the right namespaces there. All right, and then in the constructor, we'll just create a new instance of it. We should be good to go then. All right, and so we're gonna provide a way to get at all of the map notes. Remember, we use this ensure data loaded to make sure that the data has been loaded, and if it has not, then go about retrieving that data from our JSON file. I'm going to have to add some using statements here. And then I'm supposed to add a using.system.io for this open stream for read async. Go to the top here and paste that in. All right, and we'll need a file name. We'll go ahead and create a constant for that. So right here under my private field, I'll create a constant called mapnotes.json. So file name is mapnotes.json, and that'll allow me to read it and write it and make sure that I have the right name of the file no matter what. Okay, preferable to magic strings. All right, so that will allow me to retrieve all of the map notes. I'm also going to want to be able to add a new map note. Like when we click that little icon in order to create a new note. And so we're going to want to do the opposite of the retrieve. We're going to want to actually perform a save. And at this point, if you look at save map note, in fact, look at this entire class, the entire data source class, and compare it, pause the video, compare it to the data source class that we created for the daily rituals. It's almost identical. The only thing is, I'll be honest with you, I copied and pasted it and I changed out the name from ritual to map note for the most part, and it all worked. So that's how you're able to reuse some code. I know I say copy and paste is the root of all evil in software development. Well, sometimes it's a good thing too. When you can reuse some code that you've written, some snippets that you've written in the past. We're going to add one more wrinkle into this, however, that we didn't have before, and that is in addition to adding a map note, we're going to allow the deletion of a map note. So here we go. Instead of mapnotes.add and passing in an instance of map note, we're going to call delete and just call the remove method of our observable collection and then call the save, just like we did in the adding of the map note. But that's really the only difference between this and the daily rituals. All right, so you should already have a pretty good mental model, a mental map of what we're doing and how we're doing it, at least from the data access side. And I think that's all we're going to need to do there. Now, if you recall in the technique that we used the last time that we built an app together was that I made the data model a public field like so, in order to get at the data source. Obviously, since data source is sitting in the data model folder, it's in a different namespace, so we'll need to add a using mapnotes.data model. There we go. And then in the constructor, we're just going to need to create a new instance of our data source class. All right, and now we should be able to access it from both mainpage.xaml, and let's add a new blank page called, and I'm going to call this add map note, but it could be view map note or edit map note. We're going to use it for lots of purposes. So let's just go ahead and click add there, and so now we have that, but we're not going to do anything with it just yet. Let's come back to our mainpage.xaml and let's set this up. Move that down, move this over, like so. And first thing I want to do is add a command bar here. And so, you know, we've shown two techniques of how to do this, but I'm just going to put my mouse in the cursor in the page element definition, and I'm going to go down to the common properties for my page and click bottom app bar, click new, and then I'm going to put my mouse cursor in the command bar and then click to create a primary command, and I'm in the I command bar element collection editor. I'm going to click an add button just like we did before. I'm going to choose the icon from the symbols, and I'm going to find the map. Where are you? There you are. Let's choose map. There's a couple of good options there. And then I'm also going to give this a, where are you, label. All right, we'll call this add note. All right, and click OK. And then I also want a click event for this eventually. And so when you go there, what this will simply do is go frame dot navigate, navigate, and type of add map note, right? Great. When we navigate to our main page.xaml, we're going to want to grab the app.datamodel.getMapNotes, right? And this will return a task of observable collection of map note, and so we'll have to await that, and we'll just do a var map notes like so. And since we're using the await keyword, we'll have to use the async keyword, right? And now that we have a collection of map notes, we'll be able to go our page's data context equals map notes, like so. Great. And now we have our data context for our main page.xaml. It's time to bind it to something. And let's start out with a scroll viewer. If you remember last time, I realized I couldn't scroll through the contents of my main page.xaml to the very end when I got too many items in. So I don't want to forget that. Let's start there. And here's what I'm going to do actually. I'm going to create a grid with 2 rows, a top row and then the remainder of the row. And in the top row, we'll go ahead and put the name of the app like so. We'll style it with the header text block style, which, as you know, as we learned very early in the series, is defined in that generic.xaml file that's preloaded onto your phone. We'll put that in row 0 so you can see it up here. The rest, this main area here, will house a list view. And so let's go ahead and create a list view. And list views have item templates, and an item template will have a data template inside, right? All right. Now, we'll work on that data template in just a moment, but what we need to do is set the item's source, and in this case, what are we getting back from our data model? We're getting a collection, observable collection of map notes. And so I want to bind to that collection of map notes. Therefore, I will just use the simple binding expression like so. So we're binding to the page's context since it has exactly the data that we want to work with. Great. And let's set this in the right row. So let's go grid.row equals 1. That'll put it in the right spot there. And then we need to also account for the fact when somebody selects one of the items, we want to fire off a click event so that we can then navigate to the add map note.xaml page. So we need to set 3 properties. Do you remember those from very early on? Well, the first thing we're going to do is selection mode. Selection mode equals none. We don't want to allow for selection as if we're selecting multiples and then performing an operation on multiple items. We just want to turn that off completely. No selection. Instead, we want it to fire off when we click something. So here we go. Is item click enabled? True. Enable that click. And now, whenever they do item click, we want to fire off the event handler called list view item click. Great. I think that's all we're going to need to do there. So let me just make that a little more compact. Inside of our data template, we're going to have 2 text blocks. Let's see. The first text block will be bound to our title property of our map note object, and the other one will be bound to the note And what we want to do here, and we'll come back to this in a little bit. Let me set the font size for starters here. Font size equals 26. All right. Why are you giving me a problem here? What don't you like? Oh, yeah, that makes sense. What we want to do is add these to a stack panel. Stack panel, as well as grids, can have multiple children, but some or many objects can only have have one element set as their content. Data template can only have one item, so you're going to have to put either a grid or a stack panel so that you can put more items, stuff more items into it, right? And so that is the unique property of a stack panel and a grid view and list items and things like that. Okay. All right, so now it's happy, and there's some formatting things that we'll need to do eventually, but I think we have enough now to handle that scenario. So let me run this and see where we're at here, if we get any errors or if we're in good shape at the moment. We get some baseline functionality to begin with. All right, so here, oh, okay, so it did navigate to the add map note page, but obviously we haven't done any work there. So let's move on to our add map note page. And we're going to really need some data before we can really do much else with this. And this is going to be a little on the boring side, honestly. So I'm not going to waste a lot of time talking through this. Basically, I've created 4 rows. This topmost row will just be a spacer. You can see I don't really put anything in there. It just gives me a little space. I could have done it with a margin. I don't know. I got creative. In row number 1, which is this row here, I set the height to auto. So figure out the height that you need and then use that as your height. All right. The next thing that I want to do here is I'm going to go to my toolbox and I'm going to drag and drop a map control. And the reason, again, I do this so that it adds this this namespace for maps here on my page, so I don't have to manually do that. And I will set the grid.row equal to 2 there. So that should take up, star spacing means take up, hey, the rest of the space that you have available. All right, and then finally, I'm going to put a little panel of buttons at the bottom, like so. Move this out of the way. Move this over here, like so. Let's put this down to 50%, so you can see what we're doing. All right, now let's take a look. Stack panel, orientation horizontal, putting it in that 4th row, adding 2 buttons, an add button and a cancel button. And I set some margins, you know, to put a little space in between the 2 buttons there. And we have 2 handlers, a add button click and a cancel button click. So let's create the stubs for those. And I'm just putting my mouse cursor in there and then hitting F12 on the keyboard. Okay. And that should pretty much be the layout that we need. At this point, what we're going to want to do is enable the add scenario first and not really worry about the edit and delete scenario until we have a second pass at this. So in our on-navigated to, let me get rid of all this, I don't want any of this junk. All right, in the on-navigated to, I essentially want to retrieve the current position, so that's important to me. So geopoint my point, like so. And then I'm going to say locator. What locator? The locator windows.devices.geolocation, just like we learned about a couple of lessons ago. And you can see here we have an await, so we need to add an async to fix that. All right, and I have to enable the location capability for the phone, right? So we'll go to package apex manifest, go to capabilities, and add location. Great. Let's close that. We don't need that anymore. And that should position the, well, actually it needs to then set the map. So we're going to try set view async my point and zoom in to 16 out of 20. You can see I need to add a name to my map. I forgot to do that. So x name equals my map, like so. That should fix that problem. There we go. Great. Let's enable the add scenario. Whenever somebody clicks the add button, we probably should do some checks to make sure that the title's been filled in. We should make sure that the note itself has something in it. I didn't do any of those checks. That would really make it a more robust application. However, I didn't do that. As you can see, we need to add the mapnotes.datamodel namespace because, again, it's in a different namespace when we created that folder. And here we're just taking the text box values and setting them equal to properties on the map note. Did I not call it created? Let me see what I did here. Created. That's what I wanted. Okay. The date it was created. All right, and then grabbing the latitude and longitude from the map center position. And then we call the app.datamodel.addMapNote right here, which we know will save our data using the JSON serializer, right? And then we're going to navigate back out to the main page. So now let's see if that all is wired up correctly. All right, let's watch the map here. Yep, it's going to Texas. Great. Miller and George Bush. Great. So this is my first note. I think this is going to work. And I'll click the add, and all right, that's awesome. Now what we need to do is whenever you click this note, it needs to go to the add mapnote.xaml page, and it should allow me to view it, to view this note, and potentially delete the note. When I view the note, I want to see the map positioned where the note was originally taken as well. So we got a little more work ahead of us, but this is going along swimmingly at this point. Very excited. Let's move on. So let's go back to our main page.xaml. Recall that we have this list view.itemClick. Let's look at the definition of this. Currently, it's not doing anything. What I really want to do is navigate to that same page, but if you click on it, I want to pass in the item that was clicked on. In addition, so if we just click the app bar button and say I want to add something new, we're not passing any parameters. But if you click on an item, then I want to pass that item as a parameter to the add page. And then we can decide, is this an add scenario or is this a delete view scenario? Okay. So in this case, I happen to know that the item click event args has a clicked item property, which is of type object, which is exactly what we need to pass to navigate as a parameter. So there we go. That part is pretty much done. Very cool. Let's go to let's close down some things we don't need anymore. Okay, and so here's where things get a little tricky then. We've got to make a decision here. On navigated to, we need to do a check here, whether we're working in one scenario or the other. So if e.parameter is null, if it's null, then we're in an add scenario. Else, we're in a view or delete scenario. Okay, so we're going to manage the state of the page based on the input parameter to the page. So I'm going to grab all of this geolocation stuff and stick it in the add scenario. All right, and then I'll just work on this view or delete scenario. Now my point was, yeah, okay, very good, very good. And here we are going to cast the map note, and I guess that is kind of, I'm going to do something like that for now. We'll come back to that in a minute. So I'm going to cast that parameter to the onNavigated to a map node, and then I can retrieve off the title, the note. I'll change the add button's content from add to delete, and then I'm going to grab the position from my latitude and longitude and create a new position, basic GeoPosition object, and from that I can create a geopoint. And I'm just setting my point, which we used here earlier, to this new geopoint so that I can set my map's view to that point. Okay. So let's see if that part works. Now we didn't enable the delete aspect of it just yet, but let's just see if we can get back to that page, navigate back to it, and view the note in all its glory. And we can. Awesome. Very cool. So that part works. Now let's get the deleting to work. And what I need to do when somebody clicks the add button, see, it can either be add or delete, right? So we need to make that decision. And to really make that happen, I'm going to need to create a little flag, a little private field. So a private bool is viewing. And I'm going to set that equal to false. And is viewing means, am I viewing... I could change the name of this to is adding or is deleting or something like that. But viewing is that scenario where I have come in here. So is viewing would be false in this case, right? Because you're adding. But in this case, is viewing is true. So if is viewing, then we're in a delete scenario, else we're in an add scenario, like so. So if you're viewing, you can delete it, and if you clicked on the button, that means you wanted to delete. All right. Now in the case of the cancel button, we are going to want to return back to, so frame.navigate back to type of main page.xaml, right? And I think no matter whether you are going to, well, whether you delete or whether you are adding, you're still going to want to navigate back to the main page. So we'll put that there as well. Now, how to delete this? Well, I think it's actually pretty easy. We'll just do this. We need to grab off the map note. And so map note here, when we're viewing, so whatever was passed in here, this parameter, we need access to this map note later on in case we want to delete it, so we know which map note to send to the delete map note. So what we'll do is, I'm going to make another private member here, private map note called map note. And then I can just set map note like so, and then I can use it later on like here. And this will be the map note that we're currently working with. I think that's all I need for this to work at a basic level anyway. Let's try it. Let's try to delete that map note, or add one and then we'll delete it. So let's add a new one. And actually, let me cancel that. Let's change back to another place. Let's go to Temple Terrace, Florida. All right, got some friends here. Let's see, is there Glenarvan Avenue? Oh well, it doesn't matter. Let's just put let's just drop a point somewhere around here, like right there. That's good. So now let's add a new map note. Let's watch the map and make sure it goes there. Yes, it's going to go there. All right. I wrote this in Florida. All right. This is a note that I wrote in Florida. And I'll click Add. All right. Now I'm going to go back to this note now that I created in what? In Texas. And I click Delete. And it removed it. But I hate to do it this way. I want to give the user an opportunity to say, no, I didn't mean to delete that note. You know, I want to throw up a message box. So that's going to teach us a little something new. We're going to get to work with a message dialog. So in this delete scenario, what we're going to do here is I'm going to actually paste in quite a bit of code here. All right, so here we're creating a new windows.ui.popups.message dialog and ask, are you sure? And then we'll create two UI commands. Now let me add the using windows.ui.popups namespace. That should take care of just about everything. Yes. And I'm going to need to create, you see, what this is going to do is going to create a callback. So whenever the user either clicks delete or cancel, we're going to want to invoke a method, a private method called command invoked handler. So let's add that kind of here down at the bottom. And you can see we're going to check the label. If the label's delete, then we'll perform the delete. Otherwise, if you click cancel, then we'll just return. We'll just I guess we'll have to do that else scenario here. Type of navigate to the main page. Oh, wait, no, if you're going to hit cancel, then we don't want to navigate at all. Right, it was right the first time. Never mind. All right, so you hit delete, and then we navigate to the main page. Great. Passing in map note. All right, so that means we're going to remove it from here. And you can see that we have an await when we say show the message async. So anyway, let me start over again. Here we have a message dialog. We're going to add two commands. When the user invokes the command with the label of delete or with the command with the label of cancel, either way we want to say when they click that button, fire off that handler, that method handler. And then you can see we can set the command that will be invoked by default or set the command that will be invoked when escape is pressed. So this would be true in a scenario where you're using this with Windows. It doesn't really apply with the phone so much, but I wanted to add it in here because I grabbed it from an example from help and I figure I will leave it intact. And then finally await. This is where you actually show that dialog. And since it's await, we have to add the async keyword like so. And that should be all we need. So now let's run the app again. And let's delete that Florida note. And it should say, are you sure? Let's hit cancel first time. Let's go. Why did it return me back? It shouldn't have done that. Oh, I know. Here, let's stop and fix that real quick. This frame.navigate here should not be there. Will only be true in the add scenario. Well, right. Because in the delete scenario, we're already navigating. All right, so that should fix that problem. Let's try this again. Let's go to the Florida note. Okay, it zoomed over there. Let's hit delete and then cancel. Great. Let's hit delete and then say, are you sure? Yes, delete it, and it's gone. Very cool. All right, now let's add one more note with a very long title. This is a note with a very long title just to show what will happen if we don't take some precaution. And then this will be a short note. Kind of got it in reverse, right? And let's click add. And you see it goes off all the way off the page to the right, and that's not something I want to enable here. So we're going to make one last modification to our app here, and that is to work with those text blocks. This will be the very last thing that I show you. Okay, so here, what we want to do is set the text wrapping to no wrap, and then set the text trimming to word ellipsis, which will put the 3 little dots saying, okay, there's more to it, however, I can't fit it. So we'll just use ellipsis to let you know there's more to this title. Okay. Furthermore, on the full note, I probably could do something like this. Text wrapping equals wrap, but I think there's like a max lines. Maybe I could set that to like 2 or 3, you know, to limit the number of lines here that's displayed as opposed to the full note that we would see on the add map note page. I'm not going to experiment with that now. Let's just see what happens by setting this. But I would invite you to go ahead and, you know, experiment with that and have some fun with it and figure out how all this text stuff works. All right, so now you can see this is a note with a very long ... And now you can see the rest of that title, the rest of the note, and cancel. All right. Another successful exercise. I went through this extremely fast. I know. I'm very sorry. It's the only way that we can get through this much content in a reasonable amount of time. Hopefully you learned a few new techniques, not the least of which is that we were able to reuse a lot of what we did with the data model. If your data model is pretty flat, you have a good recipe now that you can use to save data into JSON and grab it back out. All you got to give it is a new object that can be serialized. As long as you don't have any commands in there or anything, and you saw how we were able to add that attribute to say ignore those attributes, those non-property type properties, you'd be in good shape. We looked at how to utilize the map, how to change its position, how to, you know, save and retrieve latitude, longitude, and get back to a specific position on a map. You know, how to work with the text blocks, how to use the same page for 2 different purposes, whether an add scenario or a delete scenario, how to manage the state of that by changing the text attribute of the button, and then having a flag and referring to that whenever we needed to perform either add logic or delete logic, and how to use that that message, pop-up message like we just added near the end here, and how it will create a callback and how to handle that callback and perform the appropriate action based on that. So learned a lot in this lesson. And that's pretty much it. I have a couple of words that I want to say in the next lesson, and it'll only take a minute or 2, and then you're on your own. Okay, we'll see you there. Thank you. Let me congratulate you on making it all the way through this series. Think about how far you've come in a relatively short amount of time. And it takes a high degree of commitment to work your way through 10 hours of content, but you did it, and you definitely have what it takes to see a project all the way through to the end. So I'm confident that you can build the next great app. I would encourage you, first of all, to take your time, to think through what you're going to build, to aim high and test your app to make sure that it's polished and that it's ready for others to use it. And then go ahead, submit it to the store and try to get it included for sale in the store. And I love to hear from people who watch this series and who've created an app and submitted it to the store. That's probably the best feedback that we can get, that this series actually helped you in some small way to actually build an app and release it into the store. If that describes you, and hey, if you need a beta tester or just some feedback, I'd be happy to help. You can tweet me at Bob Tabor, or you can write me at bob@learnvisualstudio.net, and I'll try to help out if I can. All right, so before I wrap this up, I want to thank, first of all, Larry Lieberman and Matthias Shapiro, who sponsored this and who helped me out quite a bit. If you like this kind of content, then please let them know. There is a feedback link in the footer of every page of Channel 9, or feel free to just leave a comment in the comments here, and I'm sure they'll see that. Also, I want to thank Channel 9 for their ongoing support of my work, including Golnaz and those that I've worked in the past who've taught me so much, like Clint Rutkus, who got a major promotion to the Halo team, and of course Dan Fernandez, who I've been working with for over 10 years, who's kept me connected with Microsoft, and I very much appreciate him and what he's done for me. And allow me to make one last plug for my own website, www.learnvisualstudio.net. I try to share everything I know with my clients about C# and Visual Studio and Windows and web development and data access and architecture and a lot more. And finally, I sincerely wish you the best in your career and in life and in your endeavors, of course, building Windows Phone apps. Thank you.